If doing pottery or scuba diving or rock climbing or making music ultimately led to enlightenment, there would be a lot of enlightened people on this planet. We would have a very different history and story as a human race. There are a lot of different types of meditation. All of them are beneficial in their own way. I like to use the metaphor of it's kind of like exercise. There's really like no form of exercise that's not going to give you some sort of benefit. They're all going to give you some sort of benefit, but they're all going to have slightly different results. And you're going to use certain forms of exercise to target certain issues. So, you know, if you're somebody who is wanting to get in shape because you are concerned about circulation or you have heart issues, you're going to focus on cardio, for example. And then, you know, you're going to have different kinds of exercises to focus on, you know, different parts of the body, different muscle groups and all that kind of stuff. And then there's, of course, like some workouts that are pretty full bodied. You might like something like swimming or rock climbing tends to use like a lot of different components. So meditation is really similar. There are many different forms of meditation, and each one is going to give you a different result. I want to start by sort of by process of elimination, just talk a little bit about the kinds of forms of meditation that people do that are sort of like non-traditional forms of meditation, in the sense that some people meditate by exercising or by practicing some sort of skill or trade or something that puts them in the zone. So exercise is a big one, you know, pottery is another one, different kinds of art forms, dance, music, anything that sort of gets you into that zone space, sports. Those are definitely, you could categorize them as forms of meditation, but I'm going to eliminate them from this discussion sort of right away because I'm going to fit them into a different category of meditation. I think when you go into the zone space, it's actually more of a space of channeling your higher self than it is a space of what I would categorize as meditation. And again, this is more of a semantics issue, but for the sake of this channel, for the sake of this question, I feel like it's important to get into the weeds of the semantics. Getting into the zone is got a lot of the benefits of meditation. So if you're channeling every time you play squash or whatever, or you go skiing, or you practice your art form, your glass work or whatever, you are obviously going to, it's going to provide you some of the peacefulness and clarity that meditation brings. But if doing pottery or scuba diving or rock climbing or making music ultimately led to enlightenment, there would be a lot of enlightened people on this planet. We would have a very different history and story as a human race. So it doesn't target that muscle group, you know what I mean? It doesn't, those forms of meditation or channeling are not used for and are not good for if you're trying to achieve like a long-term sense of inner peace, if you're trying to burn karma, if you're trying to achieve altered states of consciousness that allow you to say you're one of those people who just wants to get real mystical, like you want to be able to see auras or whatever, I wouldn't recommend that path. I'm not saying that it won't get you there. Well, maybe I am saying that, but let me change that. I don't know if it won't get you there. I doubt it. And I think there's a strong evidence to suggest that form of meditation, and if you do it, if you can, mountain bike your way to enlightenment, then like cool, like be the first to do it, and great, prove me wrong. I hope that I am wrong, but I am going to operate on the assumption that thousands of years of human history has shown us that isn't the case, for the sake of this video. And then let's get it now let's get into the minutia of sort of spiritual meditation. So we have like sitting meditation, we have like yoga, and we have walking meditation, we have chanting, we have reciting mantras, we have different forms of guided meditations, and then there's all sorts of like really esoteric spiritual practices that when you get into sort of like the Tibetan Buddhism, for example, they're doing all sorts of weird body things, and it can get quite interesting and quite diverse. And again, each one of these is going to have its own benefits. Each one of these is going to have a different outcome, and all of those outcomes are going to be good. So it's a little bit like choose your flavor, and I would suggest following your intuition and choosing the one that feels like just feels the best for you, because our higher selves, or whatever you want to call it, your inner voice, the part of you that like sees beyond your really narrow egoic perception, the part of you that didn't get on that plane, like had a weird feeling about that, and so didn't get in that car, and missed the accident because of it, that part of you will guide you to the meditation that you need to do first, that's going to establish you in a particular way that will allow you to expand. So for example, you wouldn't necessarily immediately become a marathon swimmer. You would maybe like start with like shorter distances, right? Or maybe you have some lung capacity issues, so maybe you would do something else to develop your lung capacity before you even get into swimming. Basically, the idea is that some meditations are going to create a bit of a groundwork for you, and like a foundation for you to be able to expand into like more and more hardcore meditations. So for example, I'm going to take yoga, and it's in a kind of a gray area between what I first started talking about, which is like the sort of channeling of the higher self through like pottery or whatever dance, and traditional meditation, or the meditation that I'm talking about in this video. It's sort of a hybrid. And so a lot of people like myself, we have a lot of trauma trapped in the body. So if you kind of like don't, so if you go straight from, if you do what I did and go straight from no healing directly into some of the more hardcore versions of meditation, like Vipassana meditation, and you haven't released a lot of trauma in your body through yoga or practices like that, that are sort of gentle physical release of trauma in the body, it's kind of a jolt, and you release so much trauma in the body in this like really intense way that you don't even, and I mean, I didn't know what was going on. Like it's years later before I realized like what was happening. But it can be quite kind of re-traumatizing to do it that way and set you back. But yoga is also one of those ones that it's a bit of a trap. Like it can make you feel really good, and it can make you feel like you're making progress in a lot of ways, but it's so physicalized. It's so often, even with the most spiritual yoga teachers who are into the breath work and all that kind of stuff, there's still enough disconnect between like that sort of physical element and the more difficult elements of sitting still, and like the benefits of sitting still, that it can kind of be a trap that people get caught in. Like it's like good enough, you know, like it makes them feel good, makes them fit, it gives them a sense of community, gives them a sense of routine, you know, gives them a sense of mental health, and then you kind of like can get stuck in that, and you're not pushing yourself forward. There's when you practice something like pure sitting meditation, especially if you're doing something like Vipassana Anapana, where they train you to sit still, like you're not supposed to fidget too much if you can avoid it. You're not supposed to change positions too much if you can avoid it. They're really powerful forms of meditation when it comes to spiritual evolution. Like if you really want to level yourself up and do some deep inner healing, like just DNA fucking past life level healing, sitting still is the most powerful form that I have tried personally. If you combine that with things like mantras or say guided meditations where you're listening to somebody, or doing visualizations, or you're listening to gongs, or you're listening to music, you're still getting the benefits of meditation those that way as well. But it provides, when you have something that, like, how do I say this? The less stimulus you have going on, the more you're just sitting as still as possible with your eyes closed, with as little sort of stimulus and distractions going on as possible, the more you are really forced to listen to your own mind. And that is really powerful. For example, one of my, I think it was the first meditation retreat I went on, it's very quiet, nobody speaks, it's a silent retreat, and it's very no distractions, as little distractions as you can possibly have. And I remember at a certain point, the sound of my own breath was so thunderingly loud that it was actually driving me crazy. And there was a few days there where I was actually just so frustrated and aggravated because the sound of my own, the air going in and out of my nose was so loud, like if a truck was going by. And at the time, they don't tell you anything in these retreats, so I had no idea. Like, now years later, after practicing many years, I'm like, that's amazing. Like, that was really good shit. Like, I was really doing the work there. But at the time, I was just like, this is insane. This is awful. I don't like this. But what I know now is that when you have gotten to that level of silence and stillness, that your own breath is annoyingly loud because it's all you have to listen to other than your own mental chatter, you are digging deep down into the roots of your shit, of your trauma, of your mental loops, of your karma. And it's great. You're getting the rot right out of the bottom of your tooth. That's a full root canal there. And we're all walking around with a whole mouthful of rotten teeth, and So sometimes it feels like, it feels to me like I got nowhere. But of course, that's not true. You know, one healed tooth is still better than no healed teeth. But yeah, the point is, my conclusion is, first of all, follow your intuition on what meditation is going to work best for you, because that's going to lay the groundwork and lay the foundation for you to get better and better, more and more the healing that you need to get to that point where eventually you do want to strive for eventually getting to the form of meditation where you are like literally just sitting still quietly, no distractions, because that's where you're doing really, really powerful work. That's not to say that healing trauma in the body through guided meditations or through the sound of gongs, for example, or through yoga isn't like really important and really deep work. It can be. You can be like releasing childhood trauma and all sorts of stuff. But you know, you're just peeling back the onion, right? So every time you're doing that, it might feel like this huge revelation, but there's more under that. And I think it's really important to just don't get caught and stuck in one form of meditation if it has any distractions whatsoever. If it's guided meditation, if it's a physical meditation like yoga, if it's a meditation with tones or chimes or something like that. Just make sure that you continue to level yourself up once you kind of feel like you've gotten the most out of it, and your body will tell you when you have. And your body will also tell you when you need to take breaks from the hardcore meditation. This is something that I'm running into, where this really pure form of Vipassana or Anapana that I do, at times my body will be like, okay, you've kicked up a bunch of stuff. It's now, you went there, you dug out the root of your rotten tooth, and now you have a bunch of like rot, you know, at the surface level. And so that's when I'll come in and do like a gong. Sorry about the boom, I gotta use this. That's when you got to do those more like surface level things. That's when I'll do the gong meditation or the guided meditations, or like some sort of exercise to move that stuff out of my body, and they combine really well together. And then I go back, right? So learn the tools, learn what they do for you, focus on the one that excites you the most, that's giving you the most benefit, and remember not to get stuck in one form of meditation or the other. Always continue to challenge yourself, because at the end of the day, we want to grow spiritually. That's why you're at this channel. Anybody who's showing up and clicking on this are people who are seeking to grow spiritually, for sure. So don't let yourself be satisfied with good enough. You know, keep going. Okay, there's my video for today. Don't forget to leave me a comment if you have any questions. Bye.